Hi, it's Hans at happierman.com. Today's topic is keep the focus on your life to avoid despair. Well, if you follow the news, there's a lot of reason to have a lot of despair, right? This is November of 2023. You've had the last month, there's been all the warring in the Middle East, Israel and Hamas and Palestinians and all of that horrific stuff going on there. There's been, for a year and a half, there's been a war in the Ukraine and Russia have been warring, and then there's all there's skirmishes all over the world that we just aren't really made aware of. We're just made aware of the two main ones. And then, of course, we've got in the United States itself, in Europe, there's a considerable amount of crime and criminal activity that seems to be encouraged and allowed, that gives us some reasons to despair. And then there's we got done with all the COVID lockdowns, but there's still, a percent of people who can't seem to get past all that. There's, for example, you still see the crazy old ladies wearing masks even now, and some of the crazy old ladies are young men, right? So there's this to me, there's this mental illness problem that could cause us to fall into the despair of how bad things are, right? Well, that's why the point of this talk is to focus on your own life and and what it would take to make your own life get better, right? What would move things for you? Because when you look out at the world at large, you say, well, what is the major problem that should be solved so we can all be happy and better, right? Well, at this point, I don't know. I don't know. For the longest time, I always thought the worst problems had to do with war and killing people. And I still think that's kind of the major problem. But certainly there's all kinds of other things in the world that aren't that great, that seem to be moving off track, right? But that's why you want to continually pull your focus back to what can I do to make my life better. And oftentimes what I can do to make my life better is try to make the lives of the people around me better, right? What can I do to help them? And then as their life improves, I'm happier to see them improving their lives. And at a minimum, what is wrong in your life and what should you do? What effort should you take to make your life better? How does you being in despair over the plight of in the Middle East, how does that help them if you're just worried about them? What are you doing about them, right? What can you do? My view is not much to help them. That's their issue. But what are your issues? Do you have pain? Are you broke? Do you have a bad job? Are you in a bad relationship? What would it take to make your life better? What if everything is pretty good? Well, what can make it even better, right? But normally people have a series of challenges and problems and issues that you need to kind of focus on to work your way out of. And it's usually best to spin it around and say, well, instead of a problem, what would the solution be to the problem? That's a better frame, is the final outcome of your problem solved is what you want to focus on. And I think if you can do that, you can solve all your problems, because you will, in effect, be going toward the solution. And I find that frame seems to help the most for solving your problems, kind of one by one by one. And that's another tip, is to not try to solve all of your problems all at once. To me, that rarely works. Usually you want to focus on the task at hand. What is the worst thing that's happening now? Can you solve that? Or perhaps that worst problem can't be solved right now. Maybe but it needs more time. So you compartmentalize that. You kind of grit your teeth and bear that part of your life while you work on the next issue. And so if you can just and the other thing I wanted to mention about the despair at the world at large, if you're enough of a student of history, you realize that the world has always been terrible in some form or fashion, that there's always something going on that's just absolutely unimaginably horrific, and that even though that's happening, the world kind of goes on, right? At one time, there was an enslavement of blacks in America, and that problem was solved. But then we still had this problem of enslavement of everyone through the form of the military draft, right? And that problem was eventually solved. One time, you'd send wave after wave of soldiers to go in and slaughter other soldiers and get slaughtered themselves. Well, that problem of warring is kind of gone away, which to me is a good thing. But what I'm saying is, at one time that was a thing, right? At one time that was considered a good thing, right? That you would be a soldier in that manner, right? Well, we've made progress, and I think if you can keep the pushing forward on these various things, we'll ultimately prevail. And you can ultimately prevail in your own life by keeping the focus on what do you need in your own life, right? I've made tremendous strides by just what is wrong with my life, how do I want it to be, and then going for that, right? I was a verbally abused man in my marriage. I ended the marriage. I left my verbally abusive wife, got divorced. That was a massive effort on my part, but that was well worth the effort. Then I had enormous problems with her later on, and I had to go to court and do various other things to kind of keep my life going, to make it better. I've had to get enormous effort to get different jobs in order to get to the dream job I have now. I've had to spend a ton of money on big problems with my teeth and my health that, I didn't want to spend that money, but I needed to spend it in order to make the kind of improvements that I needed for my teeth and my health. And I also needed to change, maybe the biggest thing with all of this was changing my mindset of that I don't matter to one that I do matter. And that gets back to the point of the whole talk is keep the focus on your life, not on the world at large. All for now.